Welcome. This is our North Atlantic Regional News Report for April 30th, 2025.
That's right. We're looking at recent political news and economic developments.
And just to be clear, we're presenting factual information straight from the sources. No opinions, no speculation here.
Exactly. Segments will be pretty brief.
We're assuming you, the listener, have a basic understanding of the region already.
And we'll cover all the sources we've listed.
Okay, let's start off in the Faroe Islands. What's happening there?
Well, first up, there's a leadership change in the Faroes delegation to the West Nordic Council.
Oh, right. Who's in now?
Bjørn Samuelson is the new chair.
Yeah.
And Janice Arana is the vice chair.
Okay. And this follows Erling Eidsgaard leaving Parliament.
Precisely. The rest of the delegation includes Henrik Old, Karla Tergersen, Eidis Hartmann Nicholson, and Bárður Laxjuni.
Right. And the West Nordic Council itself, that's Greenland, Iceland, Faroe Islands, right?
Yep, established back in '85. 18 representatives total. They're actually celebrating their 40th anniversary this year.
40 years, wow. And the annual meetings in Greenland.
In Ilulissat, Greenland, scheduled for August.
Okay, moving on within the Faroes. The Suðuroyartunnilin. I saw something about a second reading.
Yes, the bill for planning and tendering went through its second reading. There seems to be pretty broad political agreement on connecting the islands.
It's about equal conditions, living, working, travel, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's apparently been a guiding principle for their infrastructure for, well, about a century now.
So this Suðuroy tunnel investment, PF Suðuroyartunnilin, how much are we talking?
It's significant. 1.35 billion Danish kroner over 10 years.
That's a big number. Is it purely based on cost benefit?
They're framing it as a deliberate political choice for nationwide development, much like the Eysturoy and Sandoy tunnels, not just cost benefit.
Okay, and how's it being financed? Loans again?
Yes, loan financing similar to the previous tunnels. The annual payments plus operating costs are estimated around 115 million DKK.
It's on a total project cost of what, about 4.2 billion?
Roughly, yes. That's the figure being used.
How does that stack up against the current ferry service?
Well, the ferry to Suðuroy currently costs, on average, about 146 million DKK per year. That includes operations, maintenance, docking, new vessels, the whole package over 30 years.
So the idea is, once the tunnel's running and the ferry stops...
They expect annual savings of around 30 million DKK for the first 30 years.
And after the loans are paid off?
Then the full 146 million DKK annual cost of the ferry is saved.
But maintaining the ferry isn't cheap either, is it? Especially needing a new Smirl ferry soon.
Right. That's estimated at around 1 billion DKK over the next 10 years just to keep the ferry going properly. So big spending on the Suðuroy connection seems unavoidable one way or another.
And just to be clear, this current bill is just about the planning and tendering, not actually borrowing or building yet?
Correct. It's the initial stages.
Now, I also saw Landsbanken had some pretty strong words about this project.
They did, yes. Accusations against the Prime Minister's office, even the Prime Minister directly. They use the term strategic misrepresentation.
Strategic misrepresentation. What do they mean by that?
Essentially, they're claiming the cost estimate for the tunnel is deliberately too low, and the estimated average cost of the ferry is deliberately too high, all to make the tunnel look better and get it approved.
But wasn't Landsbanken involved in developing the financing plan?
That's a key point. They were part of the working group, along with the PM's office, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Fisheries and Transport, and the tunnel company itself, PF Suðuroyartunnilin.
So what did that working group report say about the costs?
It acknowledged that a precise cost for the tunnel isn't possible until it's designed, tendered, and they have actual bids. Standard procedure, really.
And the ferry costs, where did those numbers come from?
They were provided by Strandferderskip Landsins, the National Authority on Ferries. The working group used those figures.
So why is Landsbanken raising this now?
They point to a consultation letter from the Ministry of Finance. It apparently suggested looking into running the existing ferry more efficiently, maybe changing prices, separating freight and passengers, especially if the tunnel gets delayed.
And did the Finance Ministry suggest a different cost for the ferry?
They previously indicated the average cost in their proposal should probably be closer to 130 million DKK, not the 146 million used.
Okay. And how has the Faroes Parliament reacted to the bank's claims?
Well, one MP, Dennis Holm, called the accusations extremely serious. He specifically highlighted the fact that Landsbanken was part of the working group that came up with the plan. Makes it awkward, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Still in the Faroes, but looking at their role in the Danish Parliament. Juriscal's comments.
Yes, Skal from the Social Democratic Party. He considers the two Faroese seats in the Danish Folketing to hold illegitimate power.
Illegitimate power. Why?
His argument is that Faroes voters elect these MPs, but then those MPs influence Danish law, yet they aren't accountable to Danish voters.
An interesting point. He thinks Danes feel the same way.
He suggests many Danes don't accept the North Atlantic mandates having that influence. And he points out that neither the Faroes nor Greenland would accept Danish politicians sitting in their parliaments.
Did he give any examples of this influence?
He mentioned a recent vote of no confidence against the Danish climate minister, Lars Agard. Agard survived, but only because of support from the Faroes and Greenlandic MPs.
So Scale feels it's wrong, but he participates in the system himself.
He acknowledges what he calls the hypocrisy. But he argues, basically, that no Faroes politician could win an election if they promised not to use that influence in Denmark.
And Danish leaders probably wouldn't turn down those potential votes either, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He also thinks a draft for a new Commonwealth, Rigsfællesskab, might be coming soon.
And in that context.
He suggests that if there's a new, more equal partnership where Denmark can't legislate for the Faroes, then the Faroes seats in the Danish parliament become unreasonable.
What about the Greenlandic perspective on this?
Well, Ija Chemnitz, a Greenlandic MP in Denmark, believes their representation is still meaningful. For day-to-day work, questioning ministers, holding them to promises, that sort of thing.
So, differing views there. And speaking of Greenland and Denmark, talks about a new Commonwealth are actually happening.
Seems so. The chairman of the government of Greenland, Jens Frederik Nielsen, recently met Danish PM Mette Frederiksen specifically to discuss starting those negotiations.
Okay, let's move over to Greenland itself. King Frederick's visit sounds like it hit some snags.
Yeah, quite a few, actually. Mostly due to bad weather.
What got canceled?
A visit to Station Nord with the Sirius Patrol, that was one. And a planned sled trip as well. Just couldn't happen because of the conditions.
Shame. Did they manage to add anything else to the schedule?
Yes. 2 new things in Nuuk for Wednesday. A lunch with Kim Kielsen, who's the chairman of Greenland's parliament, in Atsisartu.
Okay, and the other?
A visit to Greenland's Maritime Center. The manager, Bent Olesen, was said to present their work on education and maritime development.
Now, there was some analysis suggesting the visit itself sends a message, particularly to the U.S.
Yes, some analysts interpreted it that way. A signal of Danish Greenlandic unity, especially thinking back to when President Trump expressed interest in, well, buying Greenland.
What did King Frederick himself say about that?
He downplayed it, said he wasn't on a mission, just traveling to Greenland, and he was actually pleased with the weather in Nuuk, despite the changes.
And the view from the Greenlandic government.
Jens Frederik Nielsen, who accompanied the king in Nuuk, felt the visit shows the king cares about Greenland, and he emphasized the strong bond that still exists between the royal family and the Greenlandic people.
Right. Let's head over to Iceland now. A lot seems to be happening there. This spy case.
Yes, quite a story developing. Police in the capital area said they first learned about it from the investigative program Kviker just the day before.
And they're taking it seriously.
Very seriously, they say. Regulations require police officers to get special permission for any secondary employment.
And an officer mentioned in the program is involved.
Yes, that officer has been placed on leave while the National Prosecutor's Office investigates. The police chief referred it immediately.
Is this prompting a wider look at secondary jobs in the force?
It is. The Capital Area Police Chief has started a review of secondary employment for all serving officers.
Public trust must be a big concern here.
Absolutely. The police statement emphasized that and said any breaches of standards or regulations will be dealt with firmly.
So what's the core allegation in this spy case?
It was discussed on the radio program Hedda Helst. It involves Birgir Mar Ragnarsson and Andri Sveinsen, who are described as close associates of the businessman Bjørgulfur Thor Bjørgulfsson.
Okay, and the allegation is?
That Bjørgulfur Thor Bjørgulfsson allegedly financed surveillance of people involved in a class action lawsuit against him.
Wow. Who are the key names involved in this? It sounds complex.
It does. Okay, so you have Bjørgulfur Thor Bjørgulfsson, the businessman allegedly funding it.
Right.
Then Robert Westman, another businessman, CEO of Alvatech, reportedly one of the targets and part of the lawsuit.
Yeah.
Birgir Mar Ragnarsson, the lawyer linked to Bjørgulfur Thor, supposedly acted as a liaison.
Liaison.
Then 2 former police officers, Jan Oder Olofsson and the late Guðmundur Haukur Gunnarsson, who owned a company called PPP. They were allegedly involved in organizing the surveillance.
Former police. Okay.
Then there's a serving police officer, Ludvig Christensen, who allegedly conducted the surveillance.
The one on leave now?
Presumably, yes. And then the targets mentioned include Vilhjálmur Bjarnason, a former shareholder in Landsbanken and ex-MP, and Olafur Christensen, a lawyer and also a former Landsbanken shareholder.
Quite a list. What are the oversight bodies saying?
The chair of the parliamentary committee overseeing police says initial signs suggest laws were broken.
And data protection.
The Data Protection Authority director hasn't ruled out their own investigation into what sounds like extensive surveillance.
What about the top police officials?
The National Police Commissioner expressed concern, especially about the potential hit to public trust.
And the prosecutor handling it.
The district prosecutor, Olafur Don Hawkson, called the revelations shocking. He also noted, and this is striking, that two former prosecutors from his own office were allegedly involved in the surveillance operation.
Former prosecutors, too. This keeps getting deeper.
It certainly seems that way.
Okay, moving to a different, very somber case in Iceland. The sentencing related to the Culture Night attack.
Yes, a 17-year-old boy was sentenced by the Reykjavik District Court.
What was the sentence?
8 years in prison. The charges were manslaughter and 2 counts of attempted manslaughter.
This was the knife attack last year.
That's right. Tragically, 17-year-old Bryndís Klara Birgisdóttir died about a week after the attack.
Did the prosecution ask for a specific sentence length?
Now, they asked for convictions on those charges, but left the actual prison term up to the judge.
And the trial was held privately.
Behind closed doors, yes. Due to the young age of both the victim and the defendant, who was 16 at the time of the attack.
Can you remind us briefly what happened?
The boy, then 16, attacked 5 young people who were in a car in downtown Reykjavik. He broke a window, repeatedly stabbed a young man inside.
And others were injured.
4 managed to escape, but a young woman, reportedly the boy's ex-girlfriend, remained in the car and was also stabbed multiple times.
And Bryndís Klara.
She attempted to intervene, to help the girl being attacked, and it was then that the boy attacked her, inflicting the fatal wounds. Just awful.
Truly tragic. Were there damage claims as well?
Yes. Bryndís Klara's parents each sought 17 million Icelandic krona. The girl and boy who were stabbed sought 8 million each, and the car's driver sought 5 million. So 55 million ISK in total claims.
A terrible situation all around. Okay, another court case in Iceland, a rape conviction?
Yes, 2 men, Muhammad Ali Chagra, a taxi driver, and his friend Emir Ben Abdallah, were found guilty by the Reykjavik District Court.
Guilty of what exactly?
Rape and unlawful coercion. The court found they exploited a woman's state of intoxication.
And the sentence?
2.5 years in prison for both.
When did this happen?
The incident itself was back in February of last year. The taxi driver picked the woman up from a restaurant and drove her to his friend's home, where the assault took place.
Were they arrested immediately?
They were arrested later that month, but they weren't held in pretrial custody.
And that caused some controversy, didn't it? Because the taxi driver kept working.
It did. There was public outrage. Subsequently, the Icelandic Transport Authority, Samgöngustofa, revoked his license, and City Taxi dismissed him.
What's the status of these men in Iceland?
Both have international protection, so asylum status. They've lived in Iceland for about 3 years.
Is there any move to change rules around asylum status for serious crimes?
There's a proposed bill that could potentially allow for asylum status to be revoked in cases of serious criminal convictions.
Interesting. Okay, let's switch to the Icelandic economy. Inflation figures.
Yes. Statistics, Iceland, Hagstofan, reported April inflation rose to 4.2%.
Up from what?
Up from 3.8% the previous month. It's actually the first month-on-month increase in almost a year.
So the downward trend has paused.
It seems so, yeah. It had been trending down since February 2023. Domestic consumption and housing prices are still climbing, and inflation expectations remain high.
Where are the biggest price increases?
Housing, heating, and electricity are up 7.2% over the last year. Food and beverages up 5.7%, and alcohol and tobacco up 5.6%.
What about inflation without housing costs?
That's measured at 3.2%.
So what does this mean for interest rates? The central bank has a decision coming up, right?
Yes, May 21st. And opinions are divided, it seems.
How so?
An analyst at Landsbanken thinks the chance of an interest rate cut in May is diminishing now because of this rising inflation, plus the ongoing consumption and housing price rises.
But not everyone agrees.
No. An economist at Icelandsbanki believes this uptick won't really change the central bank's overall plan for reducing rates. They expect the trajectory to continue.
So I'll have to wait and see on May 21st. What's the current rate?
7.75%.
Okay. Now, there was also a concerning report about elderly people and payday loans in Iceland.
Yes. According to Vilborg Oddsdottir from the church aid Hjálparstarf Kirkjunar, they're seeing elderly individuals struggling with these expensive loans.
Why are they taking them out? Is it financial hardship?
It seemed often driven by loneliness, actually, a perceived lack of purpose. Social workers are getting a lot of requests for help.
Are these payday loans significantly more expensive?
Oh, yes. Companies like Netgyro or Nunu Pay, Simon Pay. The permissible total fees can reach almost 43% compared to bank overdraft rates under 16%. Big difference.
Are government support measures not helping this group?
They've helped many, but the report suggests significant numbers are still trapped, often due to high rents, forcing reliance on these unaffordable loans.
Is this a new problem?
The church aid notes that after an earlier focus on young people with payday debt, they're now seeing this new group, the elderly, seeking help.
And the loneliness factor is key.
Vilborg Oddsdottir emphasizes it. People taking loans to buy non-essential things, just to have something arrive, something to look forward to, give a temporary sense of purpose, but then they might prioritize loan payments over food.
That's really sad. So it's social poverty as much as financial.
That's her point. Stemming from loneliness and lack of purpose, she advocates for more efforts to get elderly people involved in volunteering community activities.
Does she see parallels with the past?
Yes. She draws a parallel to the easy credit situation before the banking collapse, worrying that vulnerable people are being targeted again without enough support.
Have consumer groups weighed in?
Yes, the Consumers Association of Iceland has also warned against these loans, highlighting the risk of getting trapped in debt cycles.
A worrying trend. Okay, shifting to military matters, NATO exercise near Iceland.
That's right. Iceland is hosting NATO's annual submarine surveillance exercise, called Dynamic Mongoose.
Where is it taking place?
South of Iceland, and also in the waters between Iceland and Norway.
Who's participating?
4 warships, 2 submarines, an Icelandic Coast Guard vessel, the Freyja, and a Coast Guard helicopter unit.
What's the focus of the exercise?
Responding to maritime threats in that area and practicing cooperation on submarine surveillance and anti-submarine warfare. They mentioned doing it under challenging conditions.
Is this important for Iceland?
Marvin Engolson, from the Icelandic Coast Guard's Defense Division, emphasized its significance, particularly for small states like Iceland.
What are they doing right now?
Today's activities are apparently in Faxaflói Bay, involving NATO's standing fleet units, a submarine, and the Coast Guard helicopter, practicing sub-surveillance.
What's Iceland's role beyond participating with its vessel?
Providing host nation support. So facilities, food, accommodation at the security area in Keflavik.
How long does it run?
It's a 12-day exercise, set to conclude on May 9th.
Okay, one last stop, the Shetland Islands. Something about energy meters.
Yes, Octopus Energy is reporting high demand for help sessions they're running in Shetland.
Help with what?
It's about the upcoming deadline for changing radio teleswitch meters, RTS meters.
Ah, those are being phased out, aren't they?
Exactly. They stop working on June 30th. Thousands of households in Shetland still have them and need to switch to smart meters.
So Octopus Energy is running drop-in sessions.
Yes, they're at Mariel in Lerwick, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week until May 4th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Trying to reach people before the deadline hits.
Right. They've launched what they call the RTS Regional Tour, specifically to get to more remote areas like Shetland and make sure people book their meter exchange.
What if people can't make the drop-in sessions?
They can contact Octopus Energy via video call or phone for assistance.
Good to know. And finally, also in Shetland, news about the Gilbert Bain Hospital.
Yes, NHS Shetland has approved £10 million for urgent repair work on the hospital.
Urgent repairs. Is it unsafe?
They say the building is structurally safe, but a report found deteriorating conditions, crumbling cement, severe cracks, even leaning walls.
What prompted the report?
Concerns arose after some flooding back in February, water getting in through a lintel.
So £10 million for repairs. How long will it take?
Expected to take 2 years, aiming for completion in 2027.
Will services be affected?
They say some departments and services might need to be temporarily relocated. The work includes replacing external walls.
What's the goal of the work?
To ensure the hospital remains safe and functional for at least the next 10 to 15 years. Keep it resilient and weathertight.
Who's funding this?
The Scottish government is supporting it through their capital investment plan. A project team is planning it all now.
What are they telling the community?
NHS Shetland assures people that any service changes will be clearly communicated in advance, and maintaining full service capacity is a priority.
And the hospital board.
The chairman, Gary Robionsign, reassured the public it is safe and operational. The work is just to bring it up to standard for the future.
Any political reaction?
Shetland MSP Beatrice Wishart expressed deep concern, urging the Scottish government to make sure these urgent repairs don't cause further delays to investment in a new hospital for Shetland.
Right, that covers a lot of ground.
It does. So that concludes our brief regional news report for today. We touched on the Faroes West Nordic Council, the Suðuroy tunnel debate, the Danish parliament seats issue, and Greenland with King Frederick's visit.
Then Iceland. The spy case, the tragic manslaughter sentencing, the rape conviction, rising inflation, and those interest rate debates, the payday loan issue affecting the elderly, and the NATO exercise.
And finally, Shetland, with the octopus energy meter changes and the urgent repairs approved for the Gilbert Bain Hospital.
Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below.